Have a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Donaldson,
Here.
Commissioner Gunkel,
Here.
Commissioner Keller,
Here.
Commissioner Coomerly,
Here.
Commissioner Tan,
Here.
um,
Barely.
Vice Chair Moss is expected shortly, and Chair Cardoza.
Here.
So we currently have 6 commissioners present.
We have a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, they open the meeting for public comment for items that are not on the agenda tonight.
Hi. Let's see. I have a folder.
Would you please announce yourself?
My name is Fran Quittel. I'm a resident. I also serve on the Finance Advisory Committee. I have a folder here with some pictures that I would like to pass. One night I turned on my television about 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, I think it was, and I got to see you guys. And I was so happy because you were discussing an item really near and dear to my heart that had to do with what was happening with older properties in the city, and also what we were going to do in terms of what you were thinking of doing with newer properties. So I thought that you would find what my own experience and that of some of my my neighbors in the city interesting. And there was a particular thing that you mentioned that I want to address. You said you were talking about the strength, you as a group were talking about the strength of homeowner associations and HOA management of rental units in projects that are 50% owner occupied. And my question is, are condominiums being rented and are homeowners associations managing the way apartments are? Are HOAs managing properly when 50% of the units they handle are rented out? And is the statement that was made in the video I saw of the Planning Commission meeting accurate? As I mentioned, I myself serve on the Finance Advisory Committee in the city. I've lived at Watergate in one unit for over 22 years, where I have now in the past 3 years experienced 4 sewer backups without permanent assurances of remediation by the HOA, where the brunt of repairing the results of common area sewage backups into my unit has fallen upon me. I had in a folder pictures of a remodel of my unit that resulted from the first sewer backup, and then when that was not even finished, I had a huge backup into my bathroom. I have seen no images of the pipes under my unit. I haven't seen my unit file. I don't know whether I can legitimately rent my unit out and provide a warranty of habitability to my unit because of these recent recurring plumbing issues. The HOA has said that I'm liable for calling a plumber when recurrent common area pipes are clogged and sewage floods my unit. And also, I've been responsible, even though we have a 24/7 security force, for running through the hallways, distributing notices to neighbors not to use their kitchen or bathroom pipes until a clog is cleared, even though Watergate has a staff of security people and during the week a homeowner's office. I have a list here of items that I think, if you guys are looking at what is going on in terms of condos, older condos, if you're thinking about
Excuse me, your time is up here.
touring, I would like you to look at my list of considerations, and I'd be happy to email these to you.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Great.
Any further party interested in speaking? All right, we'll close the public comment. Next on the agenda is the action recap. Any comments on that? Somebody want to make a motion to approve?
I had a comment. On the page
4 where it says, however, sort of halfway through after 12 feet, however, it is noted that a wide sidewalk would be necessary in front of the future retail pad to the west, and that there is a pinch point in the sidewalk on the south side of Christie, east of Shell Mound. I would like to, I think it's important, in my opinion, that it also say that needs to be addressed as part of any future development across the street. Because it's just kind of listing it there, and I don't know. Does anyone else?
No, I believe that's what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it definitely needs to be addressed, and I would definitely want to see
As
that
a-
reflected in the minutes, if
Yeah.
that's what you said.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would move approval with that addition.
I'd second.
Okay, is that without exception? That was moved by Commissioner Donaldson and seconded by Commissioner Keller. Right, without objection? Right, okay.
Next item on the agenda is the director's report.
All right, first let me report to you on recent actions by the City Council. Normally, they would have had 2 meetings since your last meeting in January, and those would have been on February 4th and February 18th. However, the February 18th meeting was canceled because there were no items for that agenda. So on February 4th, the Planning Commission passed an ordinance that had been introduced on December 17th to update the penalty provisions in the municipal code related to the planning regulations in Title IX, and also to correct a number of typographical errors in the planning regulations. And that ordinance will take effect on March 6th. The council also passed an ordinance that had been introduced on January 21st. This was for a development agreement between the city and Emery Station Associates LLC to ensure the timely completion of the Transit Center project, also known as Emery Station West. This development agreement locks in the entitlements for an additional 5 years. The ordinance also will take effect on March 6th. As the commission may recall, you reviewed this development agreement at your October 24th meeting and forwarded it to the council without a recommendation. Your vote was 2 ayes, 2 noes, 2 abstentions, and 1 absent. The council vote was 3-2, with Councilmember West and Mayor Asher voting no. And finally, on February 4th, the City Council, sitting as the successor agency of the Emeryville Redevelopment Agency, approved the long-range property management plan regarding the disposition and use of property of the former redevelopment agency. This plan lists 10 sites, and it explains how the city intends to use them, including zoning and general plan conformity discussions. Most of these sites are slated for future park or public facility use. However, the plan also includes the Transit Center, Site B, and the so-called Shell Mound site. Some of you who've been around for a while may remember that as the Volvo site. It's the little triangular parcel south of Temescal Creek across Shell Mound Street from West Elm and Elephant Bar. This report will now be submitted to the State Department of Finance, who will review it and render a decision on whether the city can move forward with these sites as proposed in this plan. However, unfortunately, the State Department of Finance has no deadline for this review, and we understand that other cities have been waiting for more than a year for their responses to their property management plans. So we're hopeful that it will occur sooner than later. Meanwhile, we have a number of properties that are kind of tied up in limbo until we get an answer from the state, as you may know. For example, Parcel D, which is adjacent to the Sherwin-Williams site. When the Planning Commission and City Council had your study sessions on the Sherwin-Williams proposal, you were proposing a land swap, including Parcel D. And nothing can be decided definitively about Parcel D until we get an answer from the state, because that's one of the 10 properties that's in this property management plan. Similarly, the Transit Center, the reason that the City Council had to pass this development agreement to lock in those entitlements was that that project is tied up in this property management plan. And by the time we get an answer from the state, those planning entitlements would probably have expired. and Site B and all the other properties, Horton Landing Park, 48th Street Community Garden. Anyway, all these 10 properties are in limbo, basically, until we get a response from the state. So that's what the City Council did on February 4th. I would also like to inform the Commission about 3 upcoming events that may be of interest to you. The first is coming right up on Saturday, day after tomorrow, on March 1st. This is a community workshop on the draft capital improvement program. That will be, as I said, this Saturday, March 1st, from 10 a.m. to noon here in the council chambers. The CIP will also be coming to the Commission for a determination of consistency with the general plan at your next meeting on March 27th. There will be a community workshop on the housing element on Thursday, March 13th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m., also here in the council chambers. The housing element will also be coming to the Commission at your next meeting on March 27th for a study session. So those are 2 items that will be on your next agenda. If you want a sneak preview of both of them or either of them, you could attend these community workshops. Finally, there will be a ribbon cutting ceremony for the recently completed improvements at Temescal Creek Park, and that will be on Saturday, March 15th from 2 to 4 p.m. in the park. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
I just have one. Can you tell us how many things we're looking at for our next agenda?
Currently, we have 5 items on the agenda.
And is there a point in time where you cut off things?
Well, under the commission bylaws, your meeting needs to end by 11:30 unless a majority of the commission votes to continue.
Because both these items I know are pretty meaty. And
Well, yes. The other 3 items, if you'd like to know what they are, Marketplace Final Development Plan, Phase 1B for approval, a Nady site, second study session, and then there are some antennas on the top of the Sheraton Four Points Hotel, cell phone antennas, that have been there for about 20 years and never got any permits, and now they need to do something to them, so they need to legalize them. So that will also be on
how
your
about the Hyatt Hotel?
The Hyatt? No.
No, that's not.
That will be the new Hyatt,
Yeah.
the Hyatt Place.
Yeah.
That is tentatively scheduled for consideration of approval in your April meeting.
Okay.
So the 2 big development projects are Nady study session and public market hearing on approval, and then housing element, CIP, and antennas.
Can we ask that you don't put in nothing else on the agenda at this time?
It's too late. The deadline has passed.
Good.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is General Plan Annual Progress Report.
Good evening, I'm Diana Kina,
And I'm Catherine Firpo.
and we're going to present the 2013 Annual Progress Report on implementation of the
Diana, can you
general
bring the
plan.
microphone a little closer to you?
How's that?
That's good.
That's better, okay. Good. So the Housing Committee has reviewed the housing element part of this, and then City Council will review it on March 18th. And then we will send the whole thing to the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and the housing element part to the Housing and Community Development Department. The general plan includes 8 non-housing elements: land use, transportation, parks, open space, public facilities and services, urban design, and then 3 required elements in one chapter: conservation, safety, and noise, and sustainability. And so we're going to walk through the highlights of what's been done to implement the different elements. In land use, the new planning regulations were adopted, yay. And you considered 3800 San Pablo, Shell Station rebuild, Emeryville Center for Community Life, Broken Rack, Counterculture Coffee, Western Institute for Social Research, AT&T Wireless, a couple of signs, and city storage. And some of the area plans kept getting implemented a little more each year. The Park Avenue District had a parade on Park Avenue, and the North Hollis area, a greenway section was funded and designed. The Economic Development Committee was formed and did some work on starting to develop a marketing plan for the Emeryville Berkeley BioCluster, and starting to work with businesses on internet fiber access and Wi-Fi, and put up some banners for the time of the America's Cup. Implementing the transportation element, the city commented on the Alameda County Transportation Commission's Priority Development Area Investment and Growth Strategy, which is going to help them allocate one Bay Area grant funding, which is how the transportation money gets distributed through MTC, Metropolitan Transportation Commission. And the city obtained 2 grants for San Pablo Avenue crossings, and that one is a Safe Route to Schools grant in the picture. We also got a grant to study Horton Street traffic calming, look at some options for that. And the Emeryville Berkeley Oakland Transit Study is beginning to explore ways to improve transit service. We have conditioned the 3800 San Pablo Avenue project to contribute to the Emery Go Round. And the council has decided to put the North Hollis parking plan in the draft capital improvement program so they can think about whether to fund that. The Parks, Open Space, Public Facilities, and Service element, the Parks and Recreation Committee met for the first time this year, and one of the things they did was convince the council to try to do something about riprap or some sort of shoreline protection at Point Emery. They decided to put it in the draft capital improvement program so they can think about it. And the Planning Commission approved the Center of Community Life. Recreation events were held citywide. This one's at the Senior Center. And the Planning Commission also decided to put the council also decided to put the Arts Center in the draft capital improvement program. And the Parks, Open Space, Public Facilities, and Services element was also implemented by the Fire Department conducting a personal emergency preparedness class. And Public Works continues to use PG&E and East Bay Municipal Utility District data to improve energy and water efficiency. Implementing the urban design element, the Shell station was made to include some pedestrian and bicycle amenities, and the bus shelter art program continues with more art. The conservation, safety, and noise element has been implemented by the completion of the Temescal Creek Park, including some new trees and cabling and trimming of the old eucalyptus trees. The Commission required preservation of the facade at Parkside on Doyle and Stanford, and continues to implement the National Pollution Discharge Elimination permits in all the construction projects. The water efficiency requirements were applied to development projects. This is Bakery Lofts 4, and you can see that even a water efficient project can have a water feature. And we wrapped up participation in the Adapting to Rising Tides project, which has developed some adaptation responses for sea level rise. The sustainability element was implemented by applying water efficient and bay-friendly landscape requirements to the city-built Temescal Creek Park renovations and to the Shell Station rebuild and 3800 San Pablo. And the city approved off-the-grid food trucks on Haven Street for Wednesday lunchtimes. So all in all, outside the housing element, there are 70 short-term actions to implement the general plan, and this year there was progress made on 66 of them. 4 were already done before. The things that were not acted on are the Emeryville Crescent Trail idea and protecting wildlife when that's done, updating the emergency operations plan, updating the local hazards mitigation plan, implementing the environmental purchasing program, and identifying sites for developers to provide for farmers markets. So now Catherine's going to talk about the housing element part.
So the housing element report, as we said, has gone to the Housing Committee, and there are 7 goals in the current housing element: to preserve existing housing stock, to promote a range of affordability levels, to promote affordable housing for persons with special needs, to ensure housing types to meet diverse needs, to prevent homelessness and assist homeless, to promote equal opportunity in housing, and to promote environmental responsibility and sustainability. This regional housing needs is one of the things that we do in the housing element to prove that we can meet the regional housing needs, and we have gotten 90% 6% through the allocation period. And during that period, we have produced 115 units of very low-income housing, or 62% of our requirement, or 62% of what of our requirement. That's right. We produced 9 units of low-income housing, or 5% of what we were supposed to produce during the period. We've produced 46 units of moderate-income housing, or 21% of what we were supposed to produce. We've produced 683 units of market rate, or 90% of the market rate that we were supposed to produce. And when you take this all together, we've produced 75% of the allocation that we were given. One of the projects that got us 69 units of low-income, very low-income and low-income units is the Ambassador Housing Development. 23 of those units are 3 bedrooms, which helps meet the policy of family-friendly housing. It is completed and occupied. 3706 San Pablo site is a site that we're working on. We have chosen EAH Housing as the developer. They are proposing 86 units of very low and very low income housing. It also is family friendly, and we actually did a great deal of work on this, on the proposal, on the RFP for this site, describing exactly what we meant by family friendly, and then we used the family friendly design in rating the proposals, and EH did very well with that. It's also Green Point rated and or LED certified, which will, I believe they're going to go with LED on their proposal. The Parkside is a market rate housing development. In it, it has 8 very low income housing units and 13 moderate income housing units, because they were subject to the Affordable Housing Set-Aside Ordinance. One of those units is a live-work unit, which I'm working with the developers to market to artists, which is also was a policy under the housing element. It's under construction now. They are looking at rent up in October, so I'm moving forward with their marketing plan right now. 64th and Christie is also a site under construction. They have 29 very low income units, several of which are 3-bedroom family friendly units. And that also will be completed in 2014. Another program that we have is the first-time homebuyer loan program. It's available to moderate-income home buyers. It was suspended briefly after redevelopment dissolution, but we are back up and running with it. It uses funds from loan repayments, and it requires staff redid the first-time homebuyer guidelines, and it requires a down payment of 3% of the buyer's funds. We continue to have a foreclosure and predatory lending prevention policy. Foreclosures are down in the city, and we're seeing a lot less activity. We did have, during the housing element period, we did have 3 short sales on city loans, which meant that they weren't foreclosed. But we had to forgive almost $200,000 to make that happen. And we continue to provide informational referral and assistance, as well as we have a contract to do training. Also part of the housing element is fair housing issues. We have 2 providers, Echo Fair Housing, which provides tenants facing eviction, but also landlord-tenant, any sort of landlord-tenant issues. They provide services and counseling, and the East Bay Community Law Center, which helps with eviction and fair housing as well. The city has coordinated with we coordinated extensively with Emeryville Unified School District to market the Ambassador units to families with children at USUD. Switch over for a second. Still housing element, but this is the planning regulations.
So implementing the housing element, the new planning regulations incorporated the state density bonus law, included by right secondary units if certain requirements are met, allow a parking requirement reduction with transportation demand management, live work units with just a use permit in most zones, homeless shelters by right in the mixed use residential south zone, which you saw the standards for last time, I think, and low-impact projects exempt from design review, and open space requirements in multifamily projects. We never had those before. And bonuses, density, height, and floor area ratio bonuses for family-friendly housing, which we're working on the guidelines, sustainable design, alternative energy, water or energy efficiency, transportation demand management, EV charging stations, and anything else that you decide is a public benefit. Your turn.
Back. So on the housing element, we've made progress on 54 of the 59 programs during the planning period. 3 no longer apply due to the loss of redevelopment, which is regarding demolition and relocation and replacement when redevelopment funds are used. So we don't have that anymore, so they no longer apply. 2 don't apply due to the loss of rental inclusionary zoning, which is the units for developmentally disabled and the units for EUSD employees. And as I said, is 90% through the period. We have permits for 75% of the units that were required under the RENA requirements. Shall I do this?
You can do it.
So the recommended commission actions are to comment on the draft report and to recommend City Council approval of the 2013 General Plan Annual Progress Report for submittal to the State Office of Planning and Research and the State Department of Housing and Community Development.
So that concludes our report, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead.
I actually had a question for Catherine. Could you take me through the AHSA, just the affordable housing set aside, and how, just kind of a play-by-play of how that works with developers, who contacts who decides, how does it work? I never really.
So our ordinance is, as it is right now, is that developers who build ownership housing have to provide 20% of the units to people at moderate income prices. That's for ownership. For rental, they have to provide 15% of the units at affordable prices, and that's actually divided into 6% for very low and 9% for moderate. Okay. They are not allowed to get their building permit until they have an affordability agreement with the city. Mm-hmm. So the planning department, essentially, when they come in and start working with the planning department, they are told whether the ordinance applies to them or not, and given my contact information. And then there's a whole series of negotiations that happen. I'm in the process of doing that right now with 3900 Adeline. And then once they get their affordability agreement, then there's a whole series of interactions around marketing those units where I work with them extensively. There is usually a lottery for those units, so there's an application period, there's a whole notification process for people interested in affordable housing in Emeryville. There's a lottery of the people who applied during that period, and then there's a further sort of, and then that people who get through that lottery, that becomes the waiting list for the project, and then they go through the waiting list person by person and try and fill those units that they have. The units are, by the way, I don't think I mentioned this, the units are specified. That's part of the affordability agreement, and that's part of the negotiation, which units are affordable at which levels, and there's a great deal of work trying to get to that point, trying to get to that agreement.
The housing, you work with the developers to
Yes.
figure out which ones are where and
Yes.
work.
There's rules in the ordinance about how the units can be dispersed throughout, and so the developers generally propose what units they're going to make affordable and at what level. There's also requirements about where the parking spaces for those units are, and so it's just a back and forth of how that, which units end up being the affordable units.
Are they usually kind of sprinkled throughout or is it?
They're required to be sprinkled throughout. The developers are not required to make the premium units affordable, which generally refers to the top mm-hmm. floor units that face out. Mm-hmm. If they face the courtyard, they're not considered premium. So yes, so other than that, they have to be spread out in direction. They have to be similar. They have to have exactly the same amenities of the units. They have to have the, I do an analysis of the average unit size, and then each, the very low income average unit size has to be that average, close to that average unit size, and the moderate income has to be close to that average unit size. They can't, for instance, like, give me only 2-bedroom units that are in the corner and stacked on top of each other. The 2-bedroom units have to be spread around, up, down, around the project. So it's a negotiation.
Yeah. And so you said again, it was 20% for
Home ownership.
home ownership, and what was for the rental? It was
15% for the rental. It's divided 6% very low and 9% moderate. And because of the Palmer decision, some rental projects are not subject to our inclusionary housing ordinance, and some are.
What makes
What
that
does that-
difference?
yeah.
If they have come to the city for some sort of assistance, so monetary or a density bonus or a variance. So if the city has made, if they build the project by right, they're not subject to the ordinance. But if they have asked for some sort of assistance, then they are.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
So I have a few questions. So how successful is our program in integrating the low income and moderate people within the complexes that they're in and within our community? Because I work with a lot of people at Berkeley who aren't faculty, who are staff, and that, they don't make a lot of money to live in this area. And I'm often referring them to City Hall to see if they can qualify for these things. And I'd like to see a lot of people that, are in my position where they need an assistance. And so is it pretty successful in filling these units? And
Well, we never have any problem filling the units. We haven't had a lottery for rental housing for, I think, 8 years. But as I said, we're getting ready to do 2 this year, and we'll have another one the following year. So 64th and Christie will have a lottery, and Parkside. I think 64th and Christie will go first, then Parkside, and then 3900 Adeline as the developments finish.
how big is the waiting list?
We don't have a waiting list. We have a notification list. So we notify people by postcard that the applications are available. It's over 3,000 people. Because we used that notification list for Ambassador, we did a whole huge culling and got it down to 2,000. But since then, there's been about 1,000 people who are interested. We've automated our notification so people can just put it in, go to our website and put their name and address in and tell us whether they're interested in rental or housing, rental or ownership or both. And so I get those emails every day. I probably get, on average, 10 to 15 a day. And then they go onto this list, and then when developers ready, I give them the list and they mail out the postcards.
Wow. So you say we're at 90% of allocation. How do we compare to our other communities?
It's very hard to answer that question because most other jurisdictions don't take their housing element report to any public body, and so it's very hard for me to get it. The state of California, ABAG doesn't have it, and the state of California doesn't make it available.
So these are required by ABAG, but they don't track it?
Yes, no, they can't. They have no way of cracking it right
So
now.
how do they know that the communities are meeting their goals that they've assigned?
I don't believe they know.
Okay.
They would like
Government
to
at its
know.
finest.
I think they can call HCD and ask them. So the One Bay Area grant is now tying the your ability to meet your arenas as part of their competitive process.
Right.
So one of the things that HCD is doing is now everything's automated. So starting this year, we'll be able to do our housing element report online. And my assumption is that once everybody does theirs online, then it'll be available. Right now, it's, they have, everybody sends them as hard.
That's why I'm asking and surprised, because I just read the Plan B area last night. And I know these are elements that qualify for funding, especially on transit projects. And I'm kind of shocked that they don't track these things until now. And this other question might be more for Charlie, but the 3706 San Pablo project, it seems to be, from what I've seen in drawings and stuff, it seems to be quite far along. Is that going to come to us at any point, or?
3706?
Yeah.
It's not real far along. I mean, as Catherine said, a developer has been selected by the city council. We're currently negotiating an exclusive negotiating rights
Exclusive rights to
agreement,
negotiate.
ENR, with them. Catherine is actually doing that. That is hopefully going to be considered by the council in April, after which they will develop their application for planning commission consideration. So we don't expect the project to come to the commission until probably sometime this fall.
And are they doing a study session? Because I've seen the schematics and stuff, and it seems pretty developed.
Well, in order to
Well,
apply to compete
Yeah,
for
that's what I'm
the
wondering.
proposals to the housing committee, and they needed to have a certain level because it was a
Yeah.
competition, and a great deal of the competition was based on their unit design. So they needed to get fairly far along.
Okay.
But yeah,
So will they
there'll
do
be a
a
big delay, and then
Will they do a study session or kind of just bring a project to us?
Oh, well, we're in charge, I mean, we're in charge of the process,
Okay.
just like any other development application. So we will strongly recommend that they do a community meeting themselves, as we always strongly recommend. We have no way of requiring that,
Right.
but pretty much all developers do that at our suggestion. And we will very likely also have a study session before it comes to you for consideration of approval.
Okay, thanks.
One other thing I might note is the parcel is about 1/3 in Oakland. And so we are right now in the process of negotiating a memorandum of agreement with Oakland, whereby Emeryville will take the lead on all the planning and building entitlements, as we did with the Moz project across the street, which is also partially in Oakland. And that agreement has to actually be approved by the Oakland City Council. That is slated for April, tentatively.
Great, thank you. Good job.
So are any of the, so the 3706 San Pablo Avenue isn't counted in our numbers that we've gotten to so far?
no, it has to have gotten its building permit during the year to be reported.
Okay. And aside from the One Bay Area grants, what are the other implications of not meeting the RENA goals, especially for the more affordable units? Like, we seem to be doing pretty well with the market rate, but 5% of low incomes kind of...
Well, when we had redevelopment, we also had production requirements, and so that's, you'll see the production requirements under redevelopment were for very low and moderate, and that's why, to some extent, that's how that spread works. But to answer your question, very little. There's very little outside of funding, and I think the state is looking at a great deal, not just the One Bay Area, but the state is actually looking at using your ability, your willingness to meet your RENA numbers also in other types of grants.
But the main, it seems like the main goal here is to have a general plan and zoning that accommodate all of the housing that is called for by the RENA. That's one of the main things that the Housing and Community Development Department looks at when they are looking to certify your housing element. And as long as you have that and you meet all their other requirements, of course, you'll get your housing element certified. The consequence of not having a certified housing element is that you're then not eligible for certain grant funding. So the main thing is to make sure your general plan and zoning will accommodate your RENA, whether or not you actually deliver the units.
Correct.
And you said that you had marketed the Ambassador project to people with kids in the Emeryville schools. How successful was that?
I've actually requested that data from the developer, and I haven't gotten it. I was supposed to actually get it this week, so I'll follow up with you. I do know that there's two pieces to that, is students who were in USD, and then as people move in, they will take their children then to EUSD, and we expect more people to do that at the beginning, because the project was occupied in January and February, and so some parents just kept their children in their existing school for the rest of this school year. So there is the question of marketing and how well that worked. And again, it was a lottery, so a great deal, a number of families, I think 30 households that had students in EUSD applied, but then there was no preference, so they had to get through the lottery and the waiting list. So I don't know.
You had like 2,000 people on your notification list. How many people do you get in a lottery? How many
In the Ambassador lottery was 1,356 for 69 units. I mean, more people applied than were on our notification list because there's actually a huge marketing besides just the people who are on the notification list. Service providers, it's in papers, and there's special effort to reach people who are unlikely to apply.
Wow.
Good.
Is there do we know what RENA's numbers are going to be for 2014? Is it going to be similar? Is there some sort of
There's an
chart
increase.
that
Do we?
incremental? How does
The
that-
RENA number for 2014 to 2022 is, I believe, 1,498. Just shy of 1,500.
Yeah, so it's gone up.
But remember, that is now an 8-year period as opposed to the current RENA, which is for a 5-year period. So if you look at it on an annual basis, it's actually slightly less.
Yeah, so there was a bit of a disconnect for our housing element and our RENA. Our housing element was was 7 years, right? Housing element.
The current housing element?
Yeah.
5.
Is it 5?
Yeah, 2009 to 2014.
But when we report back to 2006.
Oh, I don't know about the reporting.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Thanks.
When I look at the percentages, there were 62% for very low income, 5% low income, 20%, 21% for moderate income, and then 122% for market rate, and then we're 75% towards our total goal. So the 75% is just, we're 75% towards our total goal of a number of units that
Right.
represents all of these different components. Okay. Just seems
kind of a weighted average.
optimistic. Yeah, it seems
a weighted
optimistic when we're there's portions of it that are only 5%, but I understand how it's written. Thanks.
One of the report cells here says that we're working on expanding the residential section of the citywide design guidelines. What's the status of that?
We've been meeting among staff. We met with building department people and we got some input from 2 architects, Michael Piatok, who spoke here, and another architect, Karen Smith, who do affordable family housing design. Karen's now switching to market rate. And we met with some of our staff, especially the building department people, like how to make these work with the building code. And we're about to meet with another architect about redrawing our illustration and see what other ideas he might have. And then we'll put that all together and send it to Diet and Bhatia for InDesign and bring it back to you.
Okay, great.
We hope
Sometime.
to have it back to you in April, tentatively.
Did you quiz them about some projects we could go look at for our field trip?
We could do that.
There we go.
I can tell you, I can definitely point to units that are not family friendly.
Well, that's another good thing to
Well, we
look
should
at.
see
actually
those.
wouldn't be
We
bad.
should see those as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Might not be bad.
Ambassador is having a tour, aren't they?
Yeah, the Ambassador grand opening is happening May 13th, I believe it is. You'll get, Charlie will report that to you in your March or April meeting. That will be a tour of the public spaces. The units are all occupied, so I do not believe we will see inside the units at that time.
Speaking of that, is it possible that sometime when we create a project like this that we can see it before it's occupied? I mean, I'm really interested to see what these people get to live in.
Well, we did have a tour of
Ambassador.
Of the Ambassador?
Just when it was about 80% completed.
Oh, okay.
It was very interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to have seen it. That was part of my being on here.
Yeah, we did 2 tours. Remember, we did one sort of early on before
Okay.
the units were completed. And then we did one when some units were actually occupied, but we could see into some units.
Okay.
Groundbreaking.
Any further questions?
Would there be a reason to put the Temescal Creek Park improvements under the park section as well as under the conservation section?
We could probably put it in there, yes, because it's
Put it in both?
implementing, it was probably the highest priority recommendation in the Parks and Recreation Plan. Yeah.
It'd be nice to keep beefing up our parks and open space. don't have any more questions.
Under sustainability, items 3 and 4, it's Build It Green and LEED and Bay-Friendly Landscape scorecard are all listed, but then the report really only mentions the water-efficient landscaping ordinance. So I'm wondering about Build It Green or LEED, and does the city require new developments to have a certain number of points for Build It Green or LEED?
In affordable housing, that is actually part of the RFP scoring.
But what about
They have a minimum and
any
then,
development? No?
I don't know the answer to that.
We require them to show a list and show how many points they would get on the list,
Uh-huh.
sort of to start them thinking about it. And it is something they can meet for a density bonus in the planning regulations. If they meet LEED or Build It Green, they can use that for a density bonus.
Well, I mean, a lot of cities are now requiring any new project to meet like LEED Silver or a certain number of green points, and I'm just wondering, is that something that we have in the pipeline as far as an intention?
No.
Affordable
In a word, no. It's similar to this. For bonus points for density and height and so forth, you can get points if you do LEED Silver or Gold or Platinum. You get more points for the higher level you go. My understanding is that under the most recent California Building Code, that if you meet all of the various energy and other requirements, you're almost at LEED Silver. But then you get bonus points if you optionally choose to do LEED Silver or higher level.
But we're not.
We're not requiring it. There is a requirement, I believe, for city buildings, but not for private buildings.
Do you have any further questions, comments? Like to make a motion?
I move approval.
Would you like to hear public comment?
Right.
It's not a public hearing, but we normally allow the public
Yeah.
to comment on anything on the agenda.
Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak on this matter? No? Close the public meeting.
Okay. I move approval for forwarding to the city council.
Second.
We have a roll call.
And that was Commissioner Tan, seconded by Commissioner Kummerly. On the motion, Commissioner Donaldson,
Aye.
Commissioner Gunkel,
Aye.
Commissioner Keller,
Aye.
Commissioner Kummerly,
Aye.
Commissioner Tan,
Aye.
and Chair Cardoza.
Aye.
6 ayes, the motion is approved. We'll forward this to the City Council with your recommendation that it be approved.
It's really nice to see how much progress is being made.
Yeah, that was good to read. Thanks.
Next is Commissioners' comments. Charlie, do we have any dates set up for our tour yet, or
We do not yet. We're working on it.
should we all email you our available Saturdays, or?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be okay.
What time frame are we looking at?
Well, what time frame would you like to look at? The next several months? I mean, normally the commission retreat is in the fall, and we kind of missed it this past fall. So if you want to do it now in the spring, that would be fine. We can do March, April, May, June.
Let's say March, April, May, June. Everybody send in their available dates, and that's...
Okay.
Could somebody set up one of those calendars where we all just plug in our dates and it,
Oh, Diana knows how to do that.
Do you know how to do it?
what's that?
Well,
We can do that, actually.
I think that to do that, you have to already have some dates in mind, and then you vote on which one you want. So,
We
but,
need
but,
something to go see first.
right, but if we're talking about Saturdays, there's not that many of
Yeah.
them. That's true, yeah, we could do that.
Doing that now.
Okay.
No further comments? Questions?
Any further comments? Follow in the meeting.
All right.